I want you to imagine something for a second. It's late in the evening. You've just come back from a long day that didn't really move your life forward. You check your phone, maybe open your banking app, and you already know what you're going to see before it even loads. It's that same quiet pressure sitting in your chest. Not enough money. Too many days left in the month. And the worst part? It's not even that you're lazy or careless. It's that you're trying. You're working. You're doing what you're supposed to do. But somehow, it still feels like you're running in place, while life keeps moving forward without you. Now here's the uncomfortable question most people never stop to ask. What if being broke isn't just about money, but about patterns you repeat without noticing? Because in the next 30 days, I don't want to sell you a fantasy. I want to break down something much more real. How people slowly shift out of financial pressure, not by winning the lottery, not by some sudden miracle, but by changing the way they respond to money, time, and themselves. And if you've ever felt stuck in that cycle, this is going to sound uncomfortably familiar. Most people misunderstand being broke. They think it's only about income. Like if you just made a little more, everything would fix itself. But I've seen people double their income and still feel just as broke a year later. Because the problem wasn't just what was coming in, it was what was going out. And more importantly, what was happening in between. That in between is where most people lose control. Small emotional decisions. Quick purchases to relieve stress. Money spent to feel normal for a moment. Subscriptions you forget about. Food you didn't plan for. Helping someone out when you're already stretched thin because saying no feels uncomfortable. None of it feels like a big deal in isolation, but together, it builds a system that quietly keeps you stuck. And what makes it worse is that it feels normal. When something is your normal, you stop questioning it. Let's slow it down for a moment. Being broke is often a delay between earning money and actually keeping it long enough to build anything with it. Think about it like this. Money comes in, and before it can settle, it's already assigned somewhere emotionally. Stress relief, responsibility, survival, social pressure, even guilt. And so the real issue isn't just budgeting, it's emotional control. Because when life feels uncertain, money becomes emotional comfort. You don't just spend to live, you spend to feel better. And that's where the cycle quietly repeats itself. Work, spend, stress, repeat. Not because you're careless, but because your brain is trying to regulate pressure in the fastest way it knows how. Now here's where things start to shift. There's a point where people begin to realize something that changes everything. It's not a dramatic moment. It usually comes quietly. Maybe it's one morning when you wake up and realize you worked all month and still feel behind. Or when you try to plan something simple and your money already has no space for it. And you think to yourself, if this continues for another year, nothing in my life will really change. That thought hits differently, because for the first time, you're not reacting emotionally. You're observing the pattern. And that observation is the beginning of control. So what actually changes things in a 30-day window? Not magic, not extreme discipline, clarity. Because most people don't actually know where their money disappears. They only feel the absence of it. And when you finally start paying attention, not in a stressful way, but in an honest way, you begin to see something surprising. A lot of financial pressure isn't coming from big expenses. It's coming from unexamined small decisions that feel harmless in the moment. A quick purchase here, a convenience decision there, a reaction to stress, a reaction to boredom, a reaction to pressure. Individually, they feel irrelevant. But financially, they create the gap between what you earn and what you can actually build. And here's the psychological twist most people miss. Your brain doesn't naturally optimize for long-term stability. It optimizes for immediate relief. That means when you're tired, stressed, or mentally overloaded, you don't make bad decisions. You make fast relief decisions. And those are not the same thing. This is why people can understand money perfectly in theory, but still struggle in real life. Because the moment emotion enters the situation, logic becomes secondary. So escaping being broke isn't about becoming perfect with money. It's about creating enough space between emotion and action that you can actually choose instead of react. Even a few seconds of awareness changes outcomes more than most people realize. Now let's talk about the turning point. There's a shift that happens when you stop asking, "How do I survive this month?" and start asking, "What pattern is repeating every month?" That question changes your identity in a subtle way. You're no longer just someone trying to get by. You become someone observing your system. And once you see the system, you can't unsee it. You start noticing timing. You start noticing triggers. You start noticing that certain situations always lead to the same financial outcome. And that awareness creates space. Not immediate wealth, not instant freedom, but space. And space is where control begins. From there, practical change becomes simpler than people expect. You start separating money into categories before emotion touches it. Not in a complicated way, but in a way that gives your future self a chance to exist. You start giving yourself a delay before non-essential spending. Not to punish yourself, but to interrupt impulse. You start being more honest about what's actually necessary versus what's just emotional relief in disguise. And slowly, something shifts. You're not fighting money anymore. You're interacting with it more consciously. But here's the part I really want you to hear. Escaping being broke in 30 days is not about reaching some perfect financial position. It's about breaking the cycle enough that your next 30 days are different from your last 30 days. Even small differences matter more than dramatic promises. Because financial stability isn't built in one moment. It's built in repeated decisions that slowly stop bleeding your progress. And maybe the most important realization is this. Being broke doesn't always mean you lack money. Sometimes it means your money has no memory. It comes in and disappears without leaving a trace of progress behind. So the goal isn't just to earn more. It's to make sure your money starts building something that survives your emotions, your stress, and your daily pressure. If there's one thing I want you to take from this, it's that you don't need a perfect plan to start changing your financial direction. You just need enough awareness to interrupt the pattern you've been repeating without noticing. Because once the pattern breaks, even slightly, your future stops being a repeat of your past, and you start building something slower, but real. Not a fantasy version of financial freedom, but a calmer relationship with money where you're not constantly reacting, chasing, or feeling behind. Just moving forward, one decision at a time. And sometimes, that's what getting out of broke actually looks like in real life.